Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure in welcoming all the participants and the resource person and the moderator and the members from ETS for the webinar number 106, organized by English Language Teachers Association of India on what teachers need to know in preparing students for English proficiency tests. I, Dr. Sankarakumar, the host for today's webinar, on behalf of English Language Teachers Association of India, I welcome the resource person, Dr. Arum Perwitasari, Academic Relations Specialist, ETS Global Amsterdam, the Netherlands. The moderator for today's session, Dr. Alisha Ikbar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Aligarh Muslim University. And members from ETS, Mr. Karthik Raja and Ms. Priyank, and all the participants for today's webinar. Now let's watch a promo video of ELTAI. Thank you, Mr. Vinod. English Language Teachers Association of India has begun a new movement called the Reading Movement as India Reads. ELTAI believes that reading is a skill that requires intense cognitive involvement, and if the habit is not inculcated during the school or college days, the possibility of cultivating it ever in one's lifetime is very remote. So with that in mind, the success of the movement lies in the participation of all the stakeholders, such as teachers, parents, alumni, administrators, the public, writers, corporates, NGOs, celebrities, and others, to enrich it deeply in the common psyche. The main objective of this reading movement is to promote the joy of reading and to enable learners to become lifelong learners, and to facilitate them to comprehend, store, retrieve, and apply whatever they have read to become effective speakers, writers, and listeners, as reading impacts all skills. With that in mind, the resources for this reading movement consists of a 100-hour module, consists of a video, in-session reading materials, talks, and off-session reading text for each level, keeping in mind of students' cognitive potential and interests. Through the learning management system, with videos, audio textbooks, blogs, ebooks, student reviews, and reading stars. The training programs for the mentors are going to be conducted. A curated reading list for different levels, that is, books that are popular and desirable to read. Competitions for students at the state and the national level are going to be conducted. The free consultations in institutions interested in promoting the habit of reading are going to be organized. As languages are learned through all the domains of language of knowledge, modules are developed to make all the teachers language sensitive through content and language integrated approaches. With that in mind, we request all the participants to join this reading movement of ELTAI. Now let's watch a promo video of India Reads, the reading movement of ELTAI.
Among all addictions, reading stands at the apex. It is believed that reading connects us deeper with humanity. Reading breeds intellectuals, helps us dream with our eyes wide open, and view the world more comprehensively. After all, the universe is like a big ball of knowledge. Let's read, learn, grow, achieve, and enjoy. Let us read ample and lead by example. It's time we start a reading revolution. Let's make a life out of reading.
Thank you. And I'm really very happy to introduce the moderator for today's session, Dr. Alisha Ikbar, who is currently working as assistant professor in the Department of English at Aligarh Muslim University. Her specializations lie in theater studies with a special focus on performance theory. She has recently completed her master's in applied theater from University of Warwick under the prestigious Commonwealth Scholarship Scheme of the Government of UK. She is associated with the ELTAI since 2017 as the chapter head of the Aligarh chapter. Now, I do invite the moderator for the session, Dr. Alisha Ikbar to take over the session. And before that, a couple of instructions to the participants. We request the participants not to turn on their videos and mic during the process of the seminar. All the participants are requested to raise the questions in the chat box. Thank you. Now I do invite Dr. Alisha Ikbar to take over the session.
Thank you so much, sir. With that, we will move ahead with today's program. It is with great honor and privilege that I welcome our guest speaker for today's webinar. We have with us today Dr. Arum Perwitasari. Dr. Arum is an experienced educator with over 15 years of experience in English language teaching and over 5 years of experience in areas of digital learning and assessment. Currently, she is an academic relations lead at ETS Global in Amsterdam. She holds a PhD in linguistics from Leiden University in the Netherlands. And prior to moving to the Netherlands, ma'am was an assistant professor of English in Indonesia. Without much ado, I would now invite Dr. Arum to address the gathering on the topic for today's webinar. And the topic is what teachers need to know in preparing students for English proficiency tests. And before I hand it over to ma'am, one note of advice for all the participants who are here today. At the end of the session, we will have a short question and answer session with all of you. But the questions that you have must be sent to us via the chat box. So while you're listening to ma'am speak on the topic, please send us your questions on the chat box and we will take it from there. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here today among Indian teachers, and you took your Sunday and be here with us here. And thank you, ELTAI, for having me, and also ETS India for having me. I'm going to share my screen right now. Let me know if you can or cannot see it. I believe you can see it right now, right?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. How could I make it a full screen right now? Okay. I'm going to start it from the beginning. As mentioned by Dr. Alisha, my topic today is about what we need to prepare our students when they want to prepare for the test, for English proficiency tests. So as already introduced by Dr. Alisha, that I am based in the Netherlands. I am an academic relations lead. And also, I'm actually part of the publication committee at IATEFL, International Association of Teachers of English, here in Europe. So I'll share to you some of the knowledge that we know, what you can do to prepare your students for English proficiency tests. Here are some of the topics that I want to discuss today. First, about communicative language teaching. In relation to language teaching, language preparation courses, the TOEFL IBT test, which we are going to see how this test can match with a learning objective of English language teaching, and some of the techniques and strategies in building forward skills of English, reading, listening, speaking, and writing, and some suggestions for your student that might also be helpful to you as teachers when you give suggestions to students. And then we continue with question and answer session. So communicative language teaching. So what is it actually? This is actually the approach that is actually helpful in teaching a language. When we learn language, we don't want to just sit down and be passive about it. Like learning language is not about understanding it, but how we use the language. And I believe we teachers, we agree with that statement. So as teachers, we need to create learning activities that give chances for our students, learners, to interact, to use the language. Some of the teaching materials and curriculum guidelines need to focus on communicative competence so that at the end of the courses, at the end of the classes of English language teaching and or test preparation, students are still able to communicate, to use some of the competences. Here on the slide, you could also see that most of the time when we try to apply communicative approach in language teaching, we want at least to have these 3 skills or measurements that students have. Well, we want them to communicate successfully in academic environment, that's for sure. We don't want them to just be silent and know nothing or don't use their language. And we also want them to develop career-related communication skills and how to use and understand English in the everyday activities, such as when they're watching movies or videos or using the internet and using social media. Some of the goals that usually we teachers set up for our students using this communicative approach, right? We want students to understand, we as teacher, we need to understand what type of skills that our students need to have when they want to develop their communicative skills. Creating clear learning objectives that help guide learning and skill development, and also motivate students with activities that are dynamic and meaningful. Especially when we want to prepare students for assessment. Most of the time, I receive this question. So what is the purpose of assessment in relation to learning objective, for example? And how actually assessment help teachers to create their learning objective? Well, first of all, assessment can sometimes be one of the process in evaluating learning outcomes. I think you do agree with me. So at the end of the classes, we always, teachers always set up an assessment in relation to your subject, whether you are creating your own assessment or you use that already high stakes assessment and something like that. Well, actually, the reason assessment is there is to evaluate the learning outcomes, and also to evaluate whether the learning objective are achieved or not, right? And so that's the reason. So to avoid ineffective evaluation process, sometimes teachers need to match what are in the assessment and what are and how can we teachers connect it with our learning objective. So here, the TOEFL IBT test as an assessment use the framework that is communicative and help also teachers to create learning objective in where at the end they can also assess the learning outcomes. So before I want to go on with the tips and strategies, I want to give a quick overview about the TOEFL IBT. Maybe some of you have already known it, but maybe you haven't heard anything at all. So let's see. So TOEFL IBT is the test that can help assess students' ability in academic environment. So for universities or for teachers, for example, this is to see whether students can communicate in English when they are in a university classroom, when they are in the academic environment. Also, for universities or teachers, this is to see whether students can integrate the skills of English. So when we are teaching students to listen to something, listening skills, for example, we don't want students to only listen to it. Most of the time, we always integrate it with speaking or writing. Like I can tell you, yesterday, I was in Switzerland meeting Swiss teachers, and we were talking about some of the learning objectives of the 4 skills of English. And they also do agree that it's always integrating the skills that makes our students be able to communicate in English and in an academic environment. So TOEFL IBT also help universities to see that they have a diverse and successful international students, that our students, they are going to study abroad, for example, like Indian students who are planning to go to the States or to the UK, they have very good competence in English, that their proficiency in English is fairly and objectively measured without any bias, regardless where they take the test. And also the test content that is at the TOEFL IBT is very academic sources. So as you probably remember what I said before, usually assessment should also be reflecting the learning outcomes and also setting up the objective for teachers, right? So when teachers, when the students can give the score that can measure their academic skills, we could also see that they have already been prepared for a real academic environment. So the test itself is 3 hours. Measures for skills of English, reading, listening, and then they'll get a break for 10 minutes, and then speaking and writing. It's computer-based, so it doesn't need papers. To measure these skills, for reading, there will be 3 to 4 reading passages and consist of 10 questions each. And students will have 54 to 72 minutes. For listening, there will be 3 to 4 lectures consist of 6 questions each, 2 to 3 conversation, and 5 questions each, and they have 41 to 57 minutes. Remember, because this is like academic class of English, so the content for reading and listening will very much showing the academic environment. So some teachers sometimes ask, like, how does it look like? So I can take an example of listening, for example. It's not going to be the situation where we are, or students are in a train station, for example, or in a coffee shop. No. So the lectures that they are going to have at the listening part, it's gonna be about professor giving a talk, or librarians talking to them about procedures of borrowing books, something like that. So that shows how the academic environments or situation will be in the listening and reading. And then they'll get a break for 10 minutes, and there will be speaking and writing. Speaking will consist of 4 tasks, 1 independent and 3 integrated. What is it, the integrated part? So the integrated part will be listening or reading, or listening only, and then will be responded by speaking. So, and also the same with writing. That could also be listening and reading all together, and then shouldn't have to respond in writing. For writing, that could be consist of 2 tasks with 2 different form of questions. For speaking, they will have 17 minutes to say or to respond to their thoughts, and then for writing, they will have 50 minutes to answer. So the tests could be done at a test center where all the computer have been provided by the test center, or at home. Since 2 years back, at least 2 weeks after the pandemic, this at-home test was available. So for the test center and at home, there will be 60 administration per year. And for at home, yeah, it's 24/7, 4 days a week, depending on the schedule of the students. All the tests, the content, the format, on-screen experience, because for the test center, for the test at home, students use their own equipment. Score scale and prices are all the same among test center, between test center and at home. There's also one thing that sometimes we teachers don't really know or not well informed about it, is that for the at-home test, it's not that students can do whatever they want with this with their laptop during the test. There will be a live proctor, somebody out there watching them doing the test, and there will be AI monitoring their activities during the test. So even though it's online, they are still monitored during the test. So as I mentioned before, it's the same task, it's just delivered differently. So they can take the test at home, they can use their own equipment, and it's monitored online by human proctor. We actually just launched paper edition last year, I think around August last year, and it's delivered in a paper format. Like you in India, it's available in India actually. So ETS chose to 4 countries, at least for now, to have this paper edition available. It's already in Colombia, India, Mexico, and the States. So it measures 4 skills of English: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And it's the same way as the TOEFL IBT at test center and at home, and the same score requirements. So the little difference is that for the paper one, students can take listening, reading, and writing at a test center, and then they will do the speaking part at home. And the price is the same. So some students have already said that paper edition is a lot more comfortable, because it's a combination of both. If they are not comfortable doing the listening part at home, they can do it at a test center. And also it's convenient option for our students. So it measures 4 skills of English. It also measures skills along with the CEFR, Common European Framework for Reference, and it's 100% academic content, and it's valid, reliable, and fair. So it's the same design and format. It's just the difference is reading, listening, and writing will be done at a test center, and for the speaking part, it's done on computer at home. Students can schedule the speaking skill task within 3 days of their test center appointment. Okay, so you know already the test, the overview of the test. So you know it's measured 4 skills, and then it's measured academic skills of English. So it's very specific, and it also combines the communicative approach in teaching. So now, how do we prepare our students, right? Let's see one by one, skills by skills. So I'm gonna start with reading section. So reading section, if you take a look at deeper into the section itself, we want to measure how students can read and understand materials used in academic environment. I already gave examples before what kind of environment is academic. So there will be 3 to 4 reading passages and approximately 700 words. So it's not going to be like a short 1 paragraph. It's going to be 700 words, kind of mid long paragraph. There will be 10 questions each. The content of these reading passages is taken from university level textbooks, and then the topic would vary, but usually students don't need to know the topic itself. So if there are any weird words, for example, or not commonly used word, there will be glossary feature available on the prompt. So for the skills that is used or needed for academic reading, we usually try to measure at least these 2 task design that we created. The first one is reading for basic comprehension and inference, and reading to learn. I believe you do agree that these 2 task design are really like a basic reading skill activities or design that we we basically use not only for academic purposes, right? Since we are teaching students from very low level, actually we use this kind of measure. However, in English academic speaking context, they usually do it in a more academic information part. So some of them, even though it's also reading and understanding information, but how actually they can apply it in academic materials. Some of the texts are varied and are available in magazines and journals. So it's not going to be taken from comics, for example, or and also you have to highlight the magazine would also be like a very very targeted magazines. It's not only just a magazine for pop magazines, I would say. So if you take a look at this page, for example, this is like academic reading purposes. One, we want to help students in finding informations. This is also the general purposes in reading, I'd say. Skimming, scanning, for example, these are the skills that are commonly used in reading. So effectively scanning text for key facts, dates, numbers, terms, and information, right? And also we want to increase reading rate and fluency. Other thing that is also important when we try to prepare students for reading skills are not only that they read and understand the passage, but we also want them to have a good understanding or good time management. Okay, so for example, and I think I can really relate it to when they are in academic or when they are at a university, for example. We don't want them to just read and understand, but it took them 3 months, for example, to just finish one homework from the professor. We also want to help them increase their reading rate and fluency. For basic comprehension, this is also some of the general reading purposes that we teachers are familiar with. Understanding the general topic or main idea, major point, important facts and details, vocabulary in context, and pronoun references, and making inferences about what is implied in a passage. These are all in general, and I believe you have already used it in your learning objectives so far. Part of the TOEFL IBT, there's also reading purpose for reading to learn part. So we want students to be able to recognize the organization and the purpose of a passage. We also want them to understand relationship between ideas, be it compare and contrast, for example, cause and effect, agree or disagree, or steps in a process. And we also want them to know or be able to organize information or to summarize some major points and important details from the reading passage. And we want them to know how to infer ideas throughout the passage connect. Okay, so what are an example of reading activities? I wish I could share a lot more, but I think that due to the time constraint, I could only give at least one for each activity. So maybe some of you are familiar with the QWL chart. I couldn't really do the hands on right now, but I believe you are familiar with it. Or if you are not, this is QWL chart. So you can use this activity. How do we do this? So on the right hand here, you can create this kind of table to the students. You can put the topic of the reading of today. Say, for example, how the world is created, or how the I don't know. That depends on the reading that you're doing. For example, I could say the creation of rocks, for example. Very academic and maybe science a little bit. And then you could create a table like this. K stands for know. So you put this table, what I already know, means that what students already know about the topic before they read. And then W, what I want to know, what students want to know about the topic, and what I've learned about the topic. So we can share it in the very beginning of the class. You can put the topic here. So based on the topic or the title of the passage, for example, students are then writing something here, what they already know about the topic here, and then what they want to know about the topic. So you haven't given any passages yet, okay? And then we can give a reading passage to them, share it, and ask them to read. And then we can discuss about it, and then we can match it whether what they know or what they want to know can be implied here in what they have learned. Maybe something new that they have learned, or maybe some old information that they can put here. So we can do it like this here. So if you see this KWL chart, this is also actually a combination of reading and writing, right? That because somehow students have to write something here, even though it is short information. So this activity can be used for reading to learn skill, because they want to know what's inside the topic, what's the topic about. That could also be in any proficiency level, depending on the reading passage for sure, and the difficulty level of the reading passage. Is it going to be long? Is it going to be difficult for your student to understand? And some of the learning objective that we can put here is that we want at the end of the lesson students to be able to use some strategies here, what they know before, during, and after reading, to help them construct and enhance the meaning of the passage that they are reading. Okay? You can also create some pre-tasks. For example, some teachers are very creative. They create, for example, they listed some pre-activities, listing vocabularies that's gonna happen or that's gonna appear in the passage. That could also be it. Some teachers also gave pictures representing the passage that's gonna appear. So just some pictures, just a hint of pictures for them to show to their students. And also they're also meant to be some suggestion here. So some of the suggestions that I gave to you is you can use the TOEFL IBT learning objective. We actually, at the end of this session, I'll give you some of how you get the information about it, and also to help you teachers to design classroom activities for your students. Okay? Let's come to the listening skills. So listening skills for the TOEFL IBT, it helps to measure students' ability to understand conversations and lectures in English. So these are some of the common skills. We want to measure students listening for basic comprehension, listening for pragmatic understandings about speakers' attitudes. It's not explicitly stated in the listening, for example. We want to know about that. We want to measure that they understand, and also the degree of certainty. And connecting and synthesizing information. For the listening part, there will be 3 to 4 lectures, and as I mentioned before, some with classroom discussion that could be between professor and other students, between professor and a university member. There will be also 2 to 3 conversations with 2 speakers. And they're all campus-based language use, okay? For academic listening skills, we want to be able to measure how students understand spoken English. Not necessarily on the US, like American style or dialects or way of pronunciation, but also in general, North America and other English-speaking countries. English, Canada, whatever, name it. So in academic environments, we want students to listen to lectures and conversation. That's the first part. If we want to prepare students for the TOEFL IBT, for English Proficiency Test, we want them to be able to listen to lectures and conversation. There are two types at least for listening stimuli. That could be conversation, discussion with professors or service encounters, or lectures. Could be monologue, where students listen to professor giving a talk, or that could also be interactive. So professor giving a talk and the students on the listening part raise questions about the topic that the professor were talking about. Okay. Some of the purposes for academic listening includes listening for basic comprehension, meaning we want students to be able to comprehend main ideas, major points, and important details related to the main ideas. Sometimes our students, when they listen to this type of recordings or academic recordings, I would say, they tend to take details, for example, not necessarily comprehending it. While listening, it's not about listening only to details, right? But we want them to also comprehend what is discussed in the listening. So this is the basic part. Like, we want them to have this basic comprehension. There's also pragmatic understanding, meaning even though it's not clearly stated on the listening, we want our students to recognize speakers' attitude. That speakers in the listening, they agree or disagree. They want to do it or they don't want to do it. So that kind of information. And also the degree of certainty. We also want our students to be able to recognize speakers' function or purpose. And the last part about the purpose, this is connecting and synthesizing information. We want our students to be able to recognize the organization of information presented. When we talk about academic listening, so usually the most important thing is that how the passage or how the listening part is organized. It's not like we want to give daily conversation, daily talk, for example. When lecturer give information, it's always like recognized. And how do we help students to recognize that part? And also we want students to be able to understand the relationship between ideas, compare, contrast, cause and effect, or steps in a process. This this kind of situation are really common in academic listening part. And we want them to make inferences and draw conclusion. So after the whole lectures, for example, what are the conclusions? What are the summaries of the talk? And make connections among pieces of information in a conversation and recognize topic changes. Was it digression, a side statement? Is it lectures or conversation? Or also recognizing introduction and conclusion. Did the lecturers really mention it about the conclusion or not? This is one of example of listening activity that we can help. Of course, this is not the only one that you can use, but I just want to give you one example. This activity is called stress and intonation. The purpose, the target skill is that we want students to be able to listen for pragmatic understanding. Remember, to understand the speaker's attitude, speaker's feeling, that are not clearly stated in the listening. Okay, that could also be used for intermediate or high intermediate. And at the end of the lesson, we want students to be able to recognize how word or sentence stress and intonation in conveying meaning. This is really helpful task for students. Let's see one example. We can create this kind of activity. This is stress and intonation activity. We give them the students this sentence. The stress of the word are in bold, even though these are the same sentence, if you could see it. However, since we put the stress in bold, the different places, the meaning, right, could be different. I know how to complete this assignment, even though this is like without stress. I know how to complete this statement. That means I'm sure I know. I'm sure. We can ask students to play with their peers or their partners, and then how, or we can also exercise them with this kind of activity, so that they understand that different stress of the word has also different meaning. Okay, let's continue the speaking skill. I hope the time is still there. Speaking skill. Speaking for the TOEFL IBT is to measure your ability to speak. So students' ability to speak English effectively in academic setting, not necessarily the general one, but in academic setting. There will be one independent task. They will be asked about their personal experience. There will be a question in the prompt, and they have to respond to that right away. Say, for example, what do you think about euthanasia? Or what do you think about living in a dorm? Right? And they have to respond it right away without any additional tasks that are available. For integrated tasks, there will be at least reading or listening. So they will have a reading prompt, and they will also have a listening prompt where they can listen, and then they have to respond. One academic and one campus-based. Okay? Or within these three integrated tasks, there will also one listening, and then they'll respond about it spokenly. Okay? The responses based on what they read and what they heard. And then there will be a question and they answer. Okay, so task takers respond by speaking into microphones, and all the responses are captured by computer and sent to ETS for scoring. So what are the skills that we teachers want to help students with that kind of activities in independent and integrated tasks? We want them to speak in English in educational environments. We want them, when the lecturer asks them to give ideas about something, they can speak about it confidently inside and outside the classroom. So most of the time, in general, students need to respond to questions, right? In a classroom environment, they have to respond to questions. They have to participate in academic discussions with other students. They have to synthesize and summarize what they read and talk about it, or what they listen or what they hear in the classroom, what the lecturer said, and then respond to it, and then express their views on topics under discussion. I think these are very logic situation of academic environment. And outside the classroom, this is also a common one. We want them to participate in casual conversations with their friends, with their colleagues, express their opinions, right? I don't agree. I do agree. I think it's not right. So whatsoever. And we want them also to communicate with people in university surroundings, like a bookstore, library, the housing office. So some of the skills that we can help students, we can work on their pronunciation, the word stress, intonation, patterns, and pauses. We can also help them practice giving opinions. Sometimes, even though students are able to give opinions, some of the opinions are not elaborative enough. Like they would just say, I don't agree. But when they were asked, why don't you agree? They have problems in describing those their opinions. Okay, language for describing problems and solutions, and language to compare and contrast. So it's not only like stating they do agree, or I think it's not a good idea, or it's a good idea, but they have to also be able to elaborate their ideas. And also we want them to think of a story which they are familiar. They tell a story, but that should be backed up by supporting details, be it their own experience or other people's experience. So this is an example of speaking activity. Speaking about familiar topics. That could be used for intermediate or high intermediate level student. And this is speaking. There are some learning objectives there. At the end of the lesson, we want students to be able to describe familiar persons, places, and activities. We want them to talk about events and actions, vocabulary, and use vocabulary effectively. Or we also want to appropriate range of want them to be able to use appropriate range of grammatical structures, and we want them to sustain speech at even pace for a short time. So even though it has, for one topic, teaching topic, there are 3 learning objectives, you can also divide it into 1 or 2 for each teaching time. Okay, but I think the last one is really like a very important one here, because during the test, for example, or even like in the real life, when they want to give their opinion about something, they have to be able to at least to give it a sustain their speech for a short time, at least for 1 minute. So this is a sample. Students, as teachers, we can talk about 2 places where students would like to work on their home assignment. You can also create your own topic. It doesn't have to be this one, but I listed some of the topics here so that that could also inspire you to replicate it in your classroom. So I mentioned here 2 places where students would like to work on their home assignment, whether they want to work in a cafe or at home or in library, for example. They can explain these places and why they find it very convenient. Or we can also talk about eating out and eating at home, the pluses and the minuses, contrasts, right? And their arguments behind it. We can also ask them to talk about 2 ways in spending their free time. What do they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, why, and also why do they make this kind of choices. We can also ask them to talk about 2 careers that they've dreamed of when they were a child: a doctor, professor, astronauts, and why do they find it attractive, right? And talk about the teacher you will remember. This is a nice activity, actually, that could bring back to the memories a long time ago. Then they could also think about the character of this person, why him or her make the teaching or learning time memorable. So after at least you choose one of the topic that I mentioned before, you can give this evaluation checklist. So this could also be a pair work where each student get this kind of list, and then when one student is talking about it, another student will give a score. So these are some of the criteria of the scoring. So what to listen for? We want their peer to listen to this part, whether the speech was clear, whether the student use accurate vocabulary, they use grammar correctly, or they provided 2 reasons in the explanation, spoke for the full minute or not, and then they can put a tick here. We can also give like a direct feedback, right? So it's not only written, but other students can also give direct feedback to their peers, so that they can learn also from each other. So these are some one of the example of it. Okay, what about writing tips? Writing. The TOEFL IBT test for writing section, it is to measure students' ability to write in English. There will be 2 tasks. One integrated task for 20 minutes. So integrated task, almost the same as speaking part. The question would be, for example, what do you think about having governmental debt, for example, and then they can write their response right away for 20 minutes, or other academic questions. And there will be, sorry, I was talking about independent part, right? For the integrated part, it consists of lecture and reading, and then the response to it. Okay, sorry, I was talking about the so for independent, there will be 30 minutes, and they have to respond for personal experience. Students have to be able to present their ideas clearly, well-organized manner. For academic writing, this is also something that are very common. Well-organized, cohesion, coherence, and stuff like that. They can type their answers in a computer keyboard. For in English-speaking academic situation, we want the students to be able to express their idea through clear and well-organized writing. These are the skills. Students should be able to identify one main idea and some major points to support. Since speaking and writing are the same productive skills, I believe it's also like complementing each other. It's almost the same skills that they learn. They also want to have to be able to plan how to organize the essay with an outline and develop the essays by using reasons, examples, and details for supporting, and express information in organized manner, and use effective linking words, transitional phrases, to connect their ideas. They also have to be able to use a range of grammar and vocabulary for effective expression, and also idiomatic expression sometimes, and follow the spelling and punctuation layout. For the TOEFL IBT, even though spelling and punctuation, spelling especially, it's not really like a very, how do I say, detailed score, but it's really good if we teachers can also prepare students for this kind of skills. We want them to be able to have a perfect spelling and punctuation for sure. So oftentimes students need to write a paper or respond on an exam or something they learn about in their classes. They need to combine the information that they have in their class or lectures, or read in the textbook given by the lectures, homeworks, for example, or other reading materials. This is referred to as integrated writing. So in this type of writing, integrated writing, students need to be able to take notes. Even though take notes really like sometimes sounds so easy, like everyone takes notes. But since this is listening and reading, for example, when they want to take notes, they also have to not only writing all the details, but also how they comprehend the listening and reading, right? So they can take notes on what they hear and read, and then comprehend it and use it to organize information before they write. And summarize, paraphrase, and cite information from the source material, and write about the ways the information they listen to relates to what they read. Students also need to write essays that express and support their opinions based on their own knowledge. This is independent writing. I gave already an example for speaking. For writing, that could also be the same. Like, for example, what do you think about living in a dorm? So when they write about, I don't like living in a dorm, that's all. And then, of course, we don't want them to answer that like that. We want them to also give more supporting details and elaborate their ideas. So students should be able to express their opinion and support it based on their own knowledge and experience. So how we teachers help improve our students' writing skills? We can expand using their students' vocabulary by doing crossword and puzzles. I put the link here so that you can also check it. this website also has a word of the day. So it's also good to check it. What kind of vocabularies that relates to a specific topic, for example. You can check it there. And randomly choose a word from vocabulary log. Sometimes academic reading, they also have at the back, they also have list of vocabularies. We can also start it from there. So vocabularies, when they want to speak or when they want to read, it's really important part. And make sure that students are able to paraphrase. Of course, they cannot paraphrase if they don't have loads of banks of words, right, of vocabularies. So it's also good to give them vocabulary so that they are able to paraphrase. So on the TOEFL IBT, students will not receive a score 0 if they copy the words from reading passage, so they don't have to worry about it. This is an example of writing activity. Are you familiar with 4 corners activity? Maybe any one of you? So this is the target skill is writing, and then can be used for intermediate and advanced students. Some of the learning objective, you can use 1 for your class, but you can also use 3. But I think it's going to be overloaded depending on the time of your session or your class. So at the end of the lesson, using these 4 corner activities, we want students to be able to state their own opinion and give support evidence for personal experience or knowledge. We also want them to be able to create a thesis statement. Most of the time, students, when they write, they just write it. They don't state whether they agree, they don't agree. So they usually forget what's so-called as thesis statement. This can also be used to develop a written response with appropriate explanation and detail. Let's see how it works. 4 corners activity. Okay, so this is an example only. You can also replicate it in your class if you want. We can give a paper and then we put a question there. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? The statement could also be, you can also create your own statement. You can find it somewhere else. This is an example that I put here. Always telling the truth is the most important consideration in any relationship. If you see this one, some people would agree, some people don't agree, right? So it's okay. So we can put 4 different tables like this. That's why it's 4 corner. Right? We can state strongly agree, agree, disagree, and strongly disagree here. We can ask our students to write where they find their opinion is. So say that they agree with this. So, and then they can put all the information inside the strongly agree or agree part box and state their own reasons or examples here. So this way, actually, we also practice them to take notes, to do some notes, practicing doing notes, and also make them used to jot down or list down some specific reason of examples for supporting their ideas. Okay, that's some of the strategies that I can share to you. Now, you already know the strategy, so what can you do more? So for the TOEFL IBT for teachers and advisor section, if you want to know more about those strategies and skill, we actually have teacher webinars and workshop. One is teaching academic English with the TOEFL IBT. This is a new thing that was just launched. I think it's about to launch next month. But if you are interested in participating in this workshop, so this is an online workshop that you can do yourself. Since it's not launched, I couldn't share the website to you, but if you are interested in participating in this workshop, you can email to that part there, TOEFL ELTAI@ets.org. Or if you want to know more about this workshop, you can also email there. There's also online teaching TOEFL IBT skills. We call it Propel before, but we want to change it. I think Karthik or Priyang at ETS India will help you. And most of the time, it's for free for teachers. So you can also, register for that. It's just a pity that sometimes It's really good for teacher training to see each other like face to face. I wish I could be there with you right now, but it's just a pity that we have to do it webinar from now on. But it's really good if you are in India and you contact ATS India, and then they can provide it to you, come to your place, and do the training with you face to face. There's also advisor toolkit. This is the toolkit that we provide for teachers, advisors, and agents, some information to support students in taking the test. So if you want to connect more and know more, you can scan this barcode and then you receive some important updates from us. And this is the Research Insight series, okay? So if you know, the TOEFL IBT under educational testing service is very much research-based. So all the tests that we created should be tested, should be valid, and should be reliable, right? So one of the proof that we want to make sure communities or teachers know that we publish stuff, we put it here at ets.org/TOEFL.research or Insight series. So basically, there are 10 volumes in total right now. If you want to know how the test is created, the logic behind the test, the rationale behind the test, or if you want to know the validity and reliability of the test, you can also read that. There's a whole 10 volumes right there, okay? And this is grants and awards. So the TOEFL IBT also provide grants and awards for teachers. I can name two right now. So if you could see TESOL USA. So once in a year, TESOL organization has this conference, right? But we want to focus on TESOL USA. So if you want to participate in any in a TESOL USA conference, you can check on the website of ETS, and you can apply for this support if you want to attend to the conference. The support cost $2,500, so you will receive that to participate in the conference. Of course, you have to be able to send a proposal and get accepted for sure, and then you get some support from ETS. There's also IATEFL. IATEFL most of the time held its conference in the UK. This year in April, it's gonna be in Harrogate in the UK. We actually tried to open it last year for this year. It's already closed for this year. But if you want to participate for 2024, we also open it soon. So for the IATEFL UK, the value for the scholarship is £800, and also to cover membership for the IATEFL and to fly or the conference arrangement for attending the IATEFL conference in the UK. Okay, I think that's all from my side. I will hand it over to Karthik, who is representative for ETS India, to share more about the activities for ETS India and the TOEFL IBT. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Arum. It was a great session, quite informative, and hope all the teachers, English language teachers and trainers who are attending this session today take much more back from this session. Thanks, Arum, once again. My name is Karthik. I head the business development for institutions for ETS India, where we promote both the TOEFL and the GRE tests. We have exciting partnership opportunities where we work closely with educational institutions across India. So I think you would have seen my email ID. Arum, if you don't mind, can you please share the last slide? So if you think that there could be some kind of a partnership or an association that you want to have with ETS India, where we could come into your institutions, provide excellent offers for your students who are looking at going abroad for higher studies, both for the TOEFL test as well as the GRE test. Apart from TOEFL and GRE, we also work with institutions in providing TOEFL Train the Trainer workshops, TOEFL sessions for teachers, TOEFL Masterclass and GRE Masterclass for your students. And all this I'm talking about comes with a zero cost attached to it. So there is no financial commitment or a binding with the institution. All we want to do is connect with the right people in that institution to provide the support that the student wants and the teachers want. And what we have is we want to promote TOEFL and GRE through the medium, through the institutions, so that it reaches directly to your students. So that's my email ID. Thanks, Arum, for sharing the slide. If you have any questions, or if you would like your institution to be associated with ETS India, please write into my email ID. I'm more than happy to help you. Thank you. That's it from my end. So Shankar, Sankarakumar, do you have anything? Alisha, you have anything to ask? Any questions that you want us to take? Either Arum or...
Yeah, yes, sir. I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, I think let's take a couple of questions. I know it's a Sunday evening and everyone wants to do something else. So,
yes. So we will take not a lot of time, but a couple of questions. So the first question that we have, ma'am, is from a participant from Brazil. And the question is regarding the prep course of IBT TOEFL. So the question, I think, is in two parts. So I'll ask both. So can students learn English taking a test preparation course for the IBT TOEFL, or should a test prep course just focus on the skills and strategies a student needs to perform well on the IBT TOEFL test? And there's a second part to it. So what level of English must a student already have to take an IBT TOEFL prep course?
Okay, I'll try to answer one by one. I think it's really a good question for the first one. So the question is, so do they need to prepare for the test only for the preparing for? So do they need to prepare their English only for taking the test, or can also be used for general one? So I think I also mentioned it in before that could be both actually. We can actually teach it even though they don't want to take the test, any test, but we can still use all of the list of the skills that I mentioned to you for their developing their general English, right? But it's also be good because sometimes they also need to know the measure of their English proficiency. So that's why it would also be good if you prepare for the students. So learning objectives are usually the desired learning outcomes that we want for our students. And we set it for our student. And assessment is supposed to be to evaluate, right, whether the learning outcomes that we set for the students really reflect their proficiency level. And also we want to avoid this ineffective evaluation process. So the answer of those questions could be two. You can actually, in general, starting to prepare your students for those general skills that I mentioned, and can also direct them to take the test. I mean, for students, especially in Brazil, English proficiency level, that could also be helpful for them if they want to study abroad specifically. Okay? I forgot the second question though.
The second question is actually related to the first one. The question was, what level of English must a student have to take the IBT TOEFL prep course?
So the assessment is used to measure. So they don't have, so even though they don't have any idea what level, or we don't have any idea what level they have, actually the assessment helps to define, to know the measure of their English. So it doesn't mean that they have to know first. They can just take it first and see what score they are. Are they close to native speaker score, or are they still like in the mid level or still below that? And then from there, teacher can try to set the objective, right? Oh, my students are intermediate students, or my students already advanced. So, so the way you set up the learning objective then based on the proficiency level of your students. You know what I mean? I hope that's clear. Any
Thank you,
other
ma'am.
question?
Shankar sir, do we have time for another question? Actually, there are a couple of questions on MTI.
But
Or
I
Yes,
see, I
yeah,
see one
yeah.
question now. Or I don't know, Karthik, you want to help? But I can also do that. How could students prepare for the course? So there are so many things that we can that ETS provides students to do practice practice tests. Sorry, and they are all free. I just didn't put it here. But Karthik, do you want to help, or I can also?
Yeah, sure. So you could go to the ETS website for TOEFL, and if you go into the practice section, you will see whatever is available for free for students to practice. There is a full-length practice test. There is a TOEFL Go app which you could use to practice for the test. There is a TOEFL Go YouTube channel as well, which you could watch videos to prepare as well. So there are quite a few practice mediums which are available for students, which they could use to practice for the test.
I think I have.
will
I
share
have
the link.
yeah.
You
And
want to share the link? You've got it?
I will not share the link, but I will show you some of them, and I find it really useful.
Sure.
I wish we can suggest students to take it more, because I find my students here they're really happy if I share it. So some of them are free. This I showed here, can you see my screen right now? They're all free. The test prep, for example, this is like 8-week preparation plan. Some of the students, for example, they have never taken the test and they are not sure how to start, where to start, what kind of skills should I start first, so they can check it here. So it would consist of week by week plan. Okay, there's also official guide. This is like a sample test. They will receive sample questions and full-length practice tests. So students can use this. This is books, 2 books. And this are the course online. Please check this MOOC. This is online course. Online. It's a self-paced course, because basically once the students register, or we teachers you can also check it if you want to know. So you can do the course by yourself. So there will be no time limit. You have to finish in a week, for example. No, I personally did that in 3 months because I didn't really have time. But I want to know what's inside it. So I did it in 3 months. So you could definitely suggest it. It's for free. And there's also official TOEFL IBT prep course here with 6-month subscription. These are online, the one that Karthik mentioned. Okay, these are all
yes, thanks, Arum. I've actually shared the link in the chat box. So
yes.
if you would want to click on that link, it'll take you to the practice page. There's
So
actually a full-length practice test.
So this one, you can download in your phone. They will have reading, listening, and writing, and some tips and tricks. Yeah, so it's easy to access that. So this TOEFL practice online, it's like simulation. So they do the test, and then they'll get the score, I think within 24 hours of simulation of the test. Okay? And thank you for sharing the link then, Karthik.
No problems. I'm also sharing the YouTube channel link of TOEFL.
Okay.
If you want to have a look here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Arum ma'am. I think I'll hand it over to Shankar sir now.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Arum, Karthik, and Alisha for making this event wonderful. And it's a time to say formal word of thanks to all the members who have taken part in this webinar, number 106. I profoundly thank Dr. Arum, Academic Relations Specialist, ETS Global Amsterdam, the Netherlands, for having accepted our invitation to be the resource person for this webinar number 106 on what teachers need to know in preparing students for English proficiency tests. And I, on behalf of ELTAI, thank Mr. Karthik, ETS India, for providing a necessary support in organizing this wonderful webinar. And I'm very much grateful to Dr. Alisha Ikbar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Aligarh Muslim University, for having accepted to moderate the session. And a couple of announcements related to our forthcoming international conference. The 17th International and 53rd Annual Conference of ELTAI is going to be held during October 11th and 14th, 11th to 14th of October 2023 on the topic Indian ELT, English for Global Citizenship, Multiple Teaching Acts and Learning Experiences. The entire conference is going to be hosted by Uttaranchal University, the Dehradun, Uttarakhand, India. I do welcome all the participants to take part in the forthcoming international and annual conference of ELTAI on Indian ELT, English for Global Citizenship, Multiple Teaching Acts and Learning Experiences, which is planned during October 2023, which is being hosted by Uttaranchal University, Dehradun, Uttarakhand, India. And further, I do invite all the participants to take part in the next webinar on the factors affecting reading and writing, which is scheduled during February 26, 2023, between 4:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. The resource person for the program is Dr. R. Joseph Panaya, Professor of English, National Institute of Technology, Trichy. And the program is going to be moderated by Dr. Swati Chikala from Geetham University. And the program is going to be hosted by Dr. Manish Kumar from Bhubaneswar. We do invite all the participants to take part in the next month's webinar on factors affecting reading and writing. It's scheduled on 26th February 2023 between 4:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. through the same Google Meet. The resource person for the program is Dr. R. Joseph Panaya, Professor of English, NIT Trichy, moderated by Dr. Swati Chikala of Geetham University, and hosted by Dr. Manish Kumar. I, on behalf of ELTAI, thank all the participants and the resource people who have been happily accepted our invitation to take part in our webinar. And I do thank all the participants who have shown enormous support in all our activities of ELTAI. Thank you so much. Okay, we do meet in the next webinar. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, Sankarakumar. Thanks, Kavin, and thanks, Alisha, for hosting us and for the opportunity today to present to the teachers. Thanks, Arum and Priyank, for support, and wishing you all the very best success, and thank you all.
Thank you and see you.
Thank you, Arum. Thank you, Alisha.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.